Welcome back to Simple Learning. This is part 2 of the video about the rise of nationalism in Europe, class 10 SST history. So let's continue where we left. तो हमने बात की थी यहाँ तक the previous paragraph जबकि Zollverein form हुआ था और Zollverein क्यों form हुआ था? That is because the German speaking states were facing a lot of problem, especially while trading with each other. The next heading is New Conservatism after 1815. अब यहाँ आप देखेंगे एक डेफिनेशन है कंजर्वेटिज्म की. कंजर्वेटिव मीन्स जैसे हम बोलते हैं वो बड़ा कंजर्वेटिव है. कंजर्वेटिव मीन्स जो ओल्ड ट्रेडिशंस को फॉलो करते हैं. सो कंजर्वेटिज्म इज अ फिलॉसफी दैट स्ट्रेस द इम्पोर्टेंस ऑफ ट्रेडिशन, established institutions and customs, and they prefer gradual development to quick change. ऐसा नहीं है कि वो चेंज नहीं चाहते थे. यहाँ पे एक चीज आपको ध्यान रखनी है, they wanted change but not a very quick change from the previous times. So they realized, यहाँ पे है एक लाइन आप यहाँ पे मार्क कर लीजिए. Conservatives believed that established traditional institutions of state and society, like the monarchy, the church, social hierarchies, property and family, should be preserved. But एक difference यहाँ पे दी है कि they realized that modernization can in fact strengthen the traditional institutions. तो modern होना चाहिए, but it should be on a very small scale and very gradual, not immediately. So that was the conservatism that developed after 1815. यहाँ पे एक क्वेश्चन आपके एमसीक्यू में आता है इस जगह से, where you have names of different countries. So you have in 1815 representatives of European powers, Britain, Russia, Prussia, and Austria, who had collectively defeated Napoleon. They met at Vienna to draw up a settlement for Europe. वो लोग मिले. कौन मिले? ब्रिटेन, रशिया, प्रशिया एंड ऑस्ट्रिया. These names you have to remember. They met in Vienna in 1815. और ये जो मीटिंग थी इनकी, उसमें मेन पर्सन जो थे वो थे ऑस्ट्रियन चांसलर ड्यूक मेटरनिश. इनका नाम बहुत ही इंपॉर्टेंट है. क्वेश्चन यहाँ से आता है कि कौन सी कंट्रीज मिली थी, उनके चांसलर, उनके लीडर कौन थे. दैट वाज ड्यूक मेटरनिश. और उन्होंने एक ट्रीटी साइन की विच वाज कॉल्ड ट्रीटी ऑफ वियना ऑफ 1815. तो उसमें उन्होंने क्यों वो मिले? बिकॉज जो भी चेंजेस नेपोलियन ने की थी अक्रॉस यूरोप, वो उसको उन चेंजेस को वापस चेंज करना चाहते थे. They wanted to undo most of the changes done by Napoleon after his wars and his taking over of different European countries. So what did they do in the Treaty of Vienna? ये हुआ था, the Bourbon dynasty, which had been deposed during the French Revolution, was restored to power. France lost the territories it had annexed under Napoleon. A series of states were set up on the boundaries of France to prevent French expansion in the future. तो फ्रांस के जो भी you can say whatever changes were made by Napoleon, they were undone by the Treaty of Vienna. So Treaty of Vienna कब साइन की गई थी? 1815 में. उसमें क्या साइन किया गया था? बेसिकली बर्बन डायनेस्टी जो हटा दी गई थी फ्रांस में, उसको वापस रिस्टोर कर दिया गया था पावर में. और फ्रांस के इर्द गिर्द कुछ टेरिटरीज को ऐसे रखा गया था कि आगे से फ्रेंच एक्सपेंशन इजीली ना हो पाए. तो उसके लिए ये सब चीजें की गई थी. बट इसमें एक चीज नहीं छेड़ी गई थी. द जर्मन कॉन्फेडरेशन ऑफ 39 स्टेट्स जो नेपोलियन ने सेटअप की थी, उसको उन्होंने टच नहीं किया था. ओके, सो यहाँ पे आपको ट्रीटी ऑफ वियना कब साइन हुई थी, कौन से स्टेट्स मिले थे, कौन से कंट्रीज मिले थे, उनका लीडर कौन था, ड्यूक मेटरनिश, एंड व्हाट वर द चेंजेस दैट दे डिड. दिस इज व्हाट यू हैव टू रिमेंबर हियर. एंड देन कंजर्वेटिज्म की एक और यहाँ पे एक फोटो दी गई है दैट यू हैव टू फॉलो. Conservative regimes were set up in 1815. They were very autocratic. Autocratic means वो एक बंदे की ही बात मानना चाहते थे. They did not want to really go with democratic procedures. They did not tolerate criticism and dissent, and they sought to curb activities that would question the legitimacy of government. So again, conservatism में जो regimes जो भी government setup की गई थी, they did not want people to question them. उसी से related ये फोटो है नीचे. This caricature where you can see कि सबके मुंह पे एक मजल बांध दिया गया है ताकि उनका मुंह बंद रहे. This cartoon is depicting that these leaders did not allow people to, they allowed people to think but not open their mouth. right? So this is a club of thinkers, anonymous caricature made in 1820. So pictures are equally important. So in the next part, we'll start with the revolutionaries. So the revolutionaries is the next heading, which we will continue with. Revolutionaries were the people who were against the conservatives. So after the years from following from 1815, they were afraid of conservatives, because you've done in the previous part that conservatives did not allow people easily to open their mouth against the governments. So therefore, the revolutionaries started setting up secret societies. So many secret societies are formed. Here, the main person that you have to know about is an Italian revolutionary, very famous. And question comes from here. You have to know his name. That is Giuseppe Mazzini. He was born in Genoa in Italy, and he became a member of a secret society called the Carbonari. Now, he was a very young man, and because he was attempting a revolution in a place called Liguria, because he was attempting, he was actually sent into exile. But he did not stop. He founded two more societies, Young Italy in Marseilles and then Young Europe in Bern. These are the details you will remember for your MCQs. Very, very important. His name, the societies that he founded, and later on how he helped in the unification of Italy. So, Mazzini believed that God had intended nations to be the natural units of mankind, and he believed that unification could be the basis of Italian liberty. So, because he started so many secret societies, following his model, there were many secret societies against conservatives, which were set up in Germany, France, Switzerland, and even Poland. He was totally opposed to monarchy, so were the others who were called revolutionaries. So, here you will see a picture of Giuseppe Mazzini and the founding of Young Europe in Bern in 1833. This picture is also given commonly for MCQs as a picture, and you are asked to recognize the person in the picture who was an Italian revolutionary. So you will write or mark it as Giuseppe Mazzini. Now there's one more important quotation here, children. Please underline and mark it if you have your book with you. And remember this quotation. Metternich, who was the Austrian chancellor, you remember he had been in the Congress of, they had signed the Treaty of Vienna. So he said that Mazzini is the most dangerous enemy of our social order, because he was against the conservatives, and he was setting up societies, and he was a great revolutionary. He was energetic, he was setting up societies. In spite of being in exile, he did not stop. So Metternich called him as the most dangerous enemy of our social order. Again, in MCQ they can ask you, whom did Metternich call as the most dangerous enemy of social order? That is Giuseppe Mazzini. These kind of short details from the chapter you must know. Now, next part in this timeline of this chapter is the age of revolutions. From 1830 to 1848, people started rebelling in different parts of Europe. You know that by this time, revolutionary societies had sprung up, and there were governments which were conservative, but then liberal nationalists who wanted some change in the society and a return to democracy, and the revolutionaries, they were definitely influencing the people, and especially the commercial middle classes who were not very rich, not very poor, but they were also very mobile, and they knew much more about the world. They were a little more confident. And now the liberal nationalists were, the educated middle class. They were professors, school teachers, clerks, and members of commercial middle class like merchants. So, first example of the small revolution that happened is given here in France. Now, in grade 9, we've already done the French Revolution. This is not the same thing. This is in 1830, the Bourbon dynasty, which had been restored to power by the conservatives, right? Now they were overthrown by liberal revolutionaries again in July 1830. So this was the upheaval which took place in France. So from here onwards, there were many revolutions and overthrowing of monarchies that started happening in Europe. Here again, there is a important quote. You can see, when France sneezes, Metternich once remarked, the rest of the Europe catches cold. So when something happens in France, it really affects the rest of Europe. So if people had revolted in France and again they had overthrown the Bourbon dynasty for the second time, then Metternich again remarked that, if something has happened in France, it is like the virus which is catching up. So you can relate it to the reality these days. When one sneezes, others catch cold also. Same way he said, when France sneezes, the rest of Europe catches cold. So again, this is a question for MCQ because they ask you who said these lines. When France sneezes, the rest of Europe catches cold was said by Metternich, who was the Austrian chancellor. Now, because of this July Revolution in France, there were other uprisings again in Belgium, because Belgium also wanted to break free from United Kingdom of Netherlands, and they were able to do so. So revolution started happening. The next important thing that is told here is the Greek War of Independence. Again, the question asked from here is that when did the Greek War of Independence take place? Greece was a part of the Ottoman Empire, and the Turks had been ruling there since the 15th century. Now, because of this revolutionary nationalism, people wanted to revolt against the order. So, here also, the struggle for independence started in Greece in 1821, and there also people worked against their government, against the Ottoman Empire, and they wanted to break free from it. Poets and artists lauded Greece as the cradle of European civilization, and they did not want a Muslim empire, the Turkish empire, to rule over them. So the English poet Lord Byron, this is also a question for MCQ, you can note it down. The English poet Lord Byron organized funds, and later on he went to fight in the Greek War of Independence, but he died of fever there in 1824. So here the date is important. Which English poet helped in the Greek War of Independence? It is Lord Byron. And when did he die of fever? It was in 1824. So he gave his contribution, but finally Greece was also free. So one thing is, France was free from the Bourbon dynasty in 1830, and in 1832, the Treaty of Constantinople, again important point for MCQ, Treaty of Constantinople of 1832 recognized Greece as an independent nation. So they were free from the Turkish Empire. So you can see how slowly and slowly the European states and similar language speaking and similar culture people were trying to break away from others who were ruling over them. And also there was a lot of liberalism and freedom that people were demanding. Now, in this all liberalism and people becoming free, there was a very important role of culture. So here they talk about romantic imagination and national feeling. Of course, you cannot fight for a nation if you don't have that nationalist feeling in you. So here, how that nationalist feeling was built, this is a little charming part of the chapter where they talk about romanticism. Now, what is romanticism? It is a cultural movement which sought to develop a particular form of nationalist sentiment. So romantic artists, they criticized the glorification of reason and science. They wanted more of emotion to appeal to people. Here again, they've given a picture of the massacre at Shior. Eugene Delarue has made this picture, and here he has depicted the Greeks who were said to have been killed by Turks on the island of Chios. So here again, why did he dramatize this incident? Because he wanted to show the suffering of these people, and he wanted to appeal to the emotions of the people. So focusing on emotions, focusing on intuition and feelings was the work of these romantic poets. Romanticism for the country, romanticism for a nation. Here again, you have some important words like in German countries, German places, German philosopher Johann Gottfried Herder, he claimed that true culture, true German culture is among the people, that is Das Volk. Das Volk is the people. It was through folk songs, folk poetry, and folk dances that true spirit of the nation, or Volksgeist, was popularized. So these poets contributed to telling others, and they helped in the field of nationalism among the nations in Europe. Then people started emphasizing on vernacular language, your local language, local folklore, folk stories of your language. And They also wanted to carry the modern nationalistic message to the large audiences who were mostly illiterate. So basically, the work of these poets and people who were working towards romantic nationalism was that people, through folk songs, folk stories, and vernacular languages, they should connect to the feeling that they belong to one common nationality. So this was again in the case of Poland. Now here there's a case of Poland given under Romanticism, because Poland had been partitioned at the end of 18th century by Russia, Prussia, and Austria. And even though Poland no longer existed as independent territory, people kept their nationalist feelings alive. So politically, Poland was not a free country, but people of Poland kept their nationalistic feelings alive. So here they have given example of the name of a Polish poet, that is Karol Karpinski. So remember this name for the Polish poet who revolutionized the feelings of nationalism in Polish language. And language was also important, because if you want to belong to a nation, you have a similar language, you feel one because you speak the same language. Now, here they've given a great example of Russian occupation of Poland, where Polish language was forced out of schools and people were forced to learn in Russian language only. But then in 1831, an armed rebellion against Russian rule took place. It was crushed. Following this, many members in clergy began using language as a weapon of national resistance. They were so considerate about the language children that they kept their language alive. So when in schools their children could not learn Polish and they were not allowed to, Polish was used in church gatherings and all religious instructions, so that children and the next generation could carry on with their language. So they had to face struggle. Large number of priests, because they were using Polish language, they were put and in jail, and they were sent to Siberia by Russian authorities as a punishment because they were not preaching in Russian. Use of Polish came to be seen as a symbol of struggle against Russian dominance. So this is from 1815 to 1830. So many revolts took place where many countries, no, you cannot say countries at that time, but many nationalities, they kept their language, culture, folk songs and everything alive in spite of all the political upheaval, which helped to bring nationalism to the forefront. So the next part is hunger, hardship, and popular revolt. Here we talk not only of the revolt of nations or nationalist people against their monarchy, but here we talk about the problems that were faced during 1830s, which was a period of economic hardship in Europe, and how it affected the people, the common people. So in most countries, there were more seeker of jobs than employment. People were frustrated; they were not finding work. Population from rural areas, like today, also the people come to cities to work. They also used to come to cities, and they used to live in overcrowded slums. Small producers in towns were faced with stiff competition because they had imports of cheap machine-made goods from England because of the Industrial Revolution. So there was a lot of problem. People were not able to sell their products. People did not want to manufacture more because they were not able to sell. So there was less of demand of people for jobs. But population was constantly coming to the cities looking for jobs. Now, basically, the problem also helped in textile production, because in textiles, many of the textiles were made at home or in small workshops. Then the prices of food rose very much because of a bad harvest. Again, there was a lot of problem in towns and countries. So 1848 is an important year which is mentioned here. There were food shortages, there was unemployment, and then it brought the population of Paris out on the roads. And Louis Philippe, the king, was forced to flee. Now, what happened was, when France had this revolt in 1848, there was a peasants' uprising, which is shown here in the picture. And then Louis Philippe the King fled the countryside, and a national assembly proclaimed a republic. They gave all adult males above 21 the right to vote and the guaranteed right to work, and national workshops to provide employment were also set up in France. So what we are trying to say here is that because of hunger and hardship, people were revolting, and because of that revolution, again there were changes in the lives of people. So one such example is given of France. Then earlier, in 1845, weavers in Silesia also had a revolt against their contractors, because these contractors used to give them raw material and they gave them orders for finished textiles, but they did not give proper payments. They reduced the payments of the weavers. Now, again, people were facing a lot of hardship, and harvest was not good. Prices of grains were high. So, the weavers of Silesia did whatever had happened in, you have seen the Great Fear in grade 9 book. It was similar. The weavers emerged from their home on 4th of June. They marched up to the mansion of their contractor demanding higher wages. Definitely, they were not treated very well. And then they forced their way into the houses of the contractors. They smashed the windows and broke down the crockery, furniture, porcelain, everything. Another group also went into the storehouse of the contractor, and they plundered all the supplies of cloth which they tore to shreds. So contractor again has to flee for his life. So he ran away, and but he was able to get the army to help him, and in that 11 weavers were shot. So we have done till here in part 2, children. In part 3, we will carry on with the chapter. Since it's a huge chapter, we will have like 3 or 4 parts of this chapter for you to understand the importance of different parts of the chapter. After that, I will quickly also make one video discussing the important and possible MCQs from this chapter. The different MCQs, it could be simple MCQs, your multi-answer MCQs, assertion, reason questions, and also pictures, which I'm constantly telling you also here, but you can have some source based questions also. So subscribe to the channel, like the video, and I will see you in the next part, that is part 3 of the rise of nationalism in Europe. Thank you and happy learning.